Okay guys, so we're moving on to our next unit, which is ecology, which basically is studying everything around us and the environments around us. So we're going to start off today with just introducing a few basic terms. So this is going to be on the top of your note sheet. So the first terms I want to introduce are environment and biosphere. So the environment is literally everything that surrounds you. Everything that surrounds you makes up your environment. All organisms, all living things, live in and depend on their environment. So not only do they live there and just are living there, they actually depend on different parts of their environment for survival. On Earth, all organisms found in all these different environments, we call it a zone, and we call the zone a biosphere. So all the organisms are found in this biosphere. It includes the Earth's land and water. We call it the biosphere because it's where the living things, bio means life, live. It's where their habitats are. Okay, a few other terms I want to introduce are carrying capacity and limiting factors. So these two words are words that make sense, but we're pretty much just applying a new science term to something that you probably already have thought about before. So carrying capacity is literally the maximum population of a species that an environment can hold. So it's at capacity, it's at its full maximum population. So you want to think of how many total lizards or how many total deer can a certain environment hold. That's going to be a carrying capacity. So it's actually a number, a population number. It depends on a lot of different things if you think about it. How many deer can live here? It's going to depend on how much food is there. It's going to depend on the habitat. Are there enough places for the deer to live? And then it's going to depend on other things like water, the air quality, the humans in the environment, hunting, stuff like that. So let's think of an example with humans too. The carrying capacity of humans in Charlotte, literally how many humans can live in Charlotte, depends on the space for living. It depends on the amount of food in grocery stores, and it could depend on how many jobs there are for people to have. It depends on a lot of other things too, but these are just some examples. So every population is going to have a different carrying capacity depending on the environment where they're located. So limiting factors goes with carrying capacity. Limiting factors are literally things that limit a population's growth in a certain area. So they limit the carrying capacity. They limit how many species or how much of a population of species can live in a certain environment. So these again are things you've probably thought about before, but we're just going to put this term to these things. We're going to call them limiting factors. So some examples could be food, the amount of water, sunlight, predators in the environment are going to limit how many species there are, and then habitat space, just space to live. Okay, so a quick question about this. What are 3 limiting factors that limit the carrying capacity of the population of lizards in a desert environment? I want you to just write these down somewhere on the side of your note. 3 things that could limit the total population of lizards in a desert environment. Take 2 minutes to come up with a few limiting factors. Okay, so hopefully you came up with things like the sand and literally a place to live in the sand. So maybe rocks or different bushes, how many different trees there are for the lizards to take a habitat in, to take a place to live in. How about food, the food available for the lizards to eat? You want to think about the water available in the desert. You want to think about the temperature of the desert. You want to think about how much sunlight there is, and when the sun sets and rises, that's going to depend on where the desert's located. Okay, these are things that could limit the population of lizards in this environment. Okay. So the last term you need to know is ecosystems, literally the definition of ecosystems. So the biosphere is made up of smaller parts called ecosystems. So within the biosphere there's a few different ecosystems. Ecosystems includes all the living and non-living parts of an environment, as well as the interactions among them. So it's the living things in the environment and the non-living things, and then how they interact together. Okay, so I want to just make sure we understand the difference between a living thing and a non-living thing, because sometimes it gets confusing, and that's going to be an important part of this unit. So on your notes sheet somewhere, just record really quickly if the following items are living or non-living, and we'll go over the answers at the end. Okay, so the first thing is this tree. Is it living or non-living? Just write it down quickly on your notes sheet. Okay, the next thing is this iPhone, living or non-living? Okay, how about the air in the sky? The air. Is it living or non-living? The next thing is this flower, so another type of plant. Is it living or non-living? Is it made up of cells or is it not? Is it made up of atoms? Living or non-living? Okay, the next thing is water. So literally a water molecule and water as a whole. Is it living or non-living? Okay, the next thing, the moon and the sun, living or non-living? And the last thing are these rocks, living or non-living? Okay, really quick, let's just review. The tree, this plant is living. The iPhone is non-living. The air in the sky is non-living. The flower is living. Water is non-living. The moon and the sun are non-living. And rocks are non-living. Okay, the last part of your notes are just the idea of interactions. So living and non-living things interact all the time. We just maybe don't think about it as much as we think about like predator-prey relationships. But living and non-living things interact all the time. So an example would be light. Okay, light literally interacts with plants to help them do photosynthesis. Remember, photosynthesis requires sunlight for the plants to complete it. And plants are doing that constantly. It's something that's happening that we just don't really think about. So as we go through this unit, really try to think about these underlying interactions that maybe you don't think about right away that are happening in an environment. A lot of times it's between the living and non-living things, and we tend to overlook them and kind of forget that they're happening. Okay, you're going to move on to the next box on blend space and complete some readings and the rest of this graphic organizer.